Due to technical difficulties, we're starting a few minutes late. Thank you for your patience. I'm Chapin Spencer, Director of Public Works, and thank you for coming to tonight's public hearing on the Champlain Parkway project to discuss the limited scope draft supplemental environmental impact statement. I'd like to thank all those who are joining on Zoom and on the town meeting TV, YouTube, and those who are also here in person. As everyone is aware, the space is limited for in-person attendance due to COVID-19 restrictions. While we considered hosting the meeting in an online forum solely, we wanted to make sure those without internet access would have opportunity to participate in tonight's hearing, which is why we are hosting the hearing in person and online. For those who are here in person, we've provided face masks and hand sanitizer, and we ask that people use those. We also will keep the bay doors open throughout the presentation to ensure good airflow in the space. Would like to thank all our federal, state, and local representatives who have taken the time to join us this evening. I'd like to take a brief moment to introduce the project team who've been involved in this project. That includes at Federal Highway Administration, Patrick Kirby and Kevin McAleer. At VTrans, Sue Scribner, Wayne Davis, and Andy DeForge. At CHA, our project consulting team, Dale Gozolkowski, Jim Shields, Jack Scudder, and Dave Cavall. At Stantec, we've had Jack Myers, Kevin Walsh, and Allison LaFleur. With special thanks to the Burlington team leads here, Norm Baldwin and Susan Molzon. And I want to thank the many city staff who helped set up our online and our in-person meeting space tonight. Tonight's hearing. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to provide a project update. In addition, we are providing an opportunity to comment on the limited scope draft supplemental environmental impact statement. If you are on Zoom and having technical trouble during tonight's meeting, please use the Q&A tool to contact city staff. There are multiple ways to comment during this period on the Champlain Parkway project. Comments can be actually submitted 5 different ways. First, by mail at the DPW address that we will be showing you soon, on the project website at champlainparkway.com, by email at info@champlainparkway.com. You can also provide oral comments at tonight's meeting or using a written comment form that is present at tonight's public hearing in the truck storage space at DPW. Do note that we're not monitoring comments tonight on YouTube, and the comment period does run through August 24th, 2020. So there is a significant time to submit comments after tonight's meeting. Regarding the project's graphics and animations, I want to say that in addition to the presentation you'll see tonight, there is a newly refreshed project website that has graphics and renderings showing various intersections, sections, and key features of this project. There are also several virtual animations to provide a drive-through view of the project corridor. And you can find those 5 recently added narrated animations on the project website. And those 5 include a project overview, a summary of the bicycle and pedestrian facilities, the traffic impacts and improvements, construction impact and mitigation, and the transit accommodations in the project. These short videos also have subtitles to provide additional project information to the environmental justice community. They are in Bhutanese, Nepali, Somali, Swahili, Burmese, and French. Mailers were also sent out to the King and Maple Street neighborhoods. Kevin Walsh from Stantec will now give a brief overview of the project, and the environmental justice analysis included in the limited scope draft supplemental environmental impact statement. We will take comments after the presentation. Thanks again so much for taking the time to join us this evening.
Thank you, Chapin. I want to ask, are you seeing our slides right now? I shared my screen, but I can't tell whether it's up there. I apologize. Are folks seeing that?
Kevin, we are not seeing your presentation yet. We are just seeing the speakers themselves.
All right, let me try sharing again.
We do see your PowerPoint now.
Okay, is it the full slide show?
It is showing the presentation mode. So we see the next slide in a smaller screen to the right.
All right, I apologize for this. Can anyone talk me through this? I'm in the wrong screen.
The easiest option may be just to exit presentation mode. We'll still see the border of PowerPoint itself, but at least the individual slides will be much bigger.
Kevin, would you like me to try sharing the screen?
Oh, yeah, I thought that would be good.
Did that work? Are you all seeing the screen? The presentation?
Yeah. You know what, Allison, I have to do it. Can you stop sharing and I'll share?
Kevin, you can request control of her screen, and that way you can advance the slides. So under
Okay.
view options.
I'm not seeing it. Elson, why don't I share this and try again?
That looks good, Kevin. Thank you.
So you're seeing the full screen now?
Yes,
Are
we
you-
can see the presentation.
Not with the next slide.
That's
Okay.
correct.
All right, I apologize for this, folks. With new technology and the virtual public hearing, but we're off and ready to go. So thank you, Chapin. I'm Kevin Walsh with Stantec. I'm going to give a very brief overview of the project area and go through some of the project sections, but we're really here to hear about what's going to be, what's been presented in the limited scope supplemental draft EIS and the environmental justice analysis that we completed as part of that process, and it's documented there. So as the first project overview, this is the project area. North is to the right. The alignment of the parkway is in yellow, going all the way down to the city district.
Kevin, we're not seeing any slides advance.
Are you seeing the project area?
I do not.
All right. I think the video is just not caught up. I was on the first slide.
We can see the project area now.
Okay. Thank you. So there's the project area. I'm going to break this down into 3 different sections. The first section is the interchange area. This is the section from I-189 and US Route 7 interchanged, and it follows the existing roadway that was built but never opened to construction. It ends at Home Avenue. We have a rendering showing what that will look like. It'll have 1 traffic lane in each direction. There'll be a grass median and decorative lighting. And this is the transition area from interstate speeds down to the 25-mile-an-hour design on the local streets. The next section is Home Avenue to Lakeside Avenue, following the yellow alignment. This segment will be new construction along vacant land that was previously acquired for the project. And a rendering of that project area. It'll be a 25-mile-an-hour city street over the entire duration. It'll be 2 lanes of traffic, 1 in each direction with turn lanes at intersections. There will be coordinated traffic signals at Home Avenue, Flynn Avenue, Sears Lane, and Lakeside Avenue. On the eastern side of the parkway, there will be a shared use path.
Kevin, I don't think your video's caught up. We're still on slide 6.
Okay.
We just reached a rendering interchange on slide 7.
Okay. Are you at Home Ave and Lakeside?
The rendering, yes.
The rendering. Okay, it looks like I have to advance it on both presentations. So on the eastern side, there will be this shared use path. There will be a grass area with trees and lighting and sharrows within the project layout to notify motorists of the presence of cyclists in the roadway. The last section of the roadway, I'm just switching slides manually here, is the Lakeside Avenue to Pine Street alignment, ending at the city center district or downtown area. Pine Street near Maple Street, this is a rendering. It includes reconstruction of the roadway and drainage improvements, but Pine Street will be repaved with pavement markings provided and new roadway signs installed. On-road pavement markings for bicycles will be provided. Once constructed, the project will improve access to the downtown area. It'll improve circulation, mobility, and safety on adjacent streets, provide traffic relief in the southwestern quadrant of the city, reduce disruption of neighborhoods, and provide more direct route for truck traffic to the industrial areas and more direct path to downtown. The project has a long history with the National Environmental Policy Act reviews dating back to the 1970s. The most recent document was the final supplemental EIS approved by Federal Highway in 2009, and a record of decision was issued in 2010. However, recently Federal Highway rescinded the 2010 record of decision to perform targeted outreach to any minority and low-income populations in the project area in order to determine whether conclusions reached in the previous final supplemental EIS are still valid. A notice of availability of the most recent document, the LSDS EIS, was published on July 10th, 2020. That started the 45-day public comment period. It's important to note that this is a limited scope document in two ways. It was limited to environmental justice concerns and impacts to low-income and minority populations within the geographic area of the Maple and Pine Street neighborhood. And comments are due back on August 24th, 2020. I'm going to describe the environmental justice analysis and methodology, but first just wanted to show what the definition that Federal Highway uses. They describe environmental justice at Federal Highway means identifying and addressing disproportionately high and adverse effects of the agency's programs, policies, and activities on minority and low-income populations to achieve an equitable distribution of benefits and burdens. The concept of EJ emerged in the early 1980s, fueled by concerns that minority and low-income populations were experiencing more negative environmental effects when compared to other populations. And in 1994, President Clinton signed Executive Order 12898, which directed every federal agency to make EJ part of its mission. Now, it's been over 25 years since that executive order was signed, and transportation decision-making has changed significantly since that time. And there's been more tools available for conducting environmental justice outreach at the same time. The EJ analysis included in the LSDIS document follows the procedures and recommendations of these policies and guidance. I'm going to run through the methodology. The first step is to identify the study area. That was done by looking at the traffic model and the extent that was used in the EIS. So that's been done. Identify any minority and or low-income populations by compiling race, ethnicity, and poverty status using data for the project area. The third step is to evaluate if benefits and or adverse effects of minority and or low-income populations exist as a result of the project. And if those exist, those adverse effects, identify and address whether there are any disproportionately high and adverse effects on minority and or low-income populations after mitigation is considered. and then take those effects and compare adverse effects on other non-minority and or higher income populations. So you did a comparison to determine whether there's a disproportionate adverse effect. For that data source, the second step in the environmental justice analysis is to identify those potential low income and or minority neighborhoods and communities utilizing the most recent data. And for this effort, we use the American Community Survey, most recent data from 2014 to 2018, 5-year estimate. That gives the most recent and reliable data at the census tract and block group level. Federal Highway defines minority populations as Black, African American or African descent, Hispanic or Latino origin, American Indian, Alaskan Native, or Native Hawaiian. This is used in conjunction with the Title VI Act of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits discrimination based on race, color, and national origin. So these are the census tracts within the project area. The area in purple is Census Tract 10, which includes the Maple and King Street neighborhood, which is here in hash, shown in a hash area. And we looked at the data within those census tracts and present those here for the race and ethnicity within the project area. Each census tract within the project area has at least one minority population that exceeds that of the city average for that population. But Census Tract 10, sorry, my slides aren't catching up. It was determined that Census Tract 10 included a minority environmental justice population. And the city of Burlington, you can see, has a 17.1% average, whereas this census tract for Maple and King Street has 18.1%. That was actually higher in more recent analysis, past analysis. There's been a little bit of shifting of the demographics within the city. The overall minority populations have gone up in the city, but they actually went down in this neighborhood. We then looked at low income populations. And it's important to note that the United States Department of Transportation and Federal Highway use Department of Health and Human Services, HHS poverty guidelines. And those are listed here on the bottom. Those are nationwide poverty guidelines that are applied across the country. So as an example, if you're a single person, that poverty level is 12,140. If you have 7+ people, it's 38,060. No areas within this project area meet that poverty standard. Therefore, the EJ analysis did not address low income populations within the project area, as none were identified. Once we identified the Maple and King Street area through both the census tract and local knowledge, the city, Federal Highway, and VTrans held a targeted public outreach meeting on September 26, 2019. The meeting announcement was announced and it was translated into Bhutanese, Nepali, Swahili, Somali, Burmese, and French, and interpreters for those languages were all available at the public meeting. And these are a few photos from that public meeting. Approximately 60 people attended. In responses to comments received, there was another public open house held by the city at the King Street
Can you
Center.
advance the slide, please? It's showing low income populations currently. Thank you.
Okay. I apologize, I have to advance on 2 screens. So these are pictures from the public involvement meeting, as I already mentioned. Additional public outreach more recently in preparation for this, Chapin has already mentioned some of this information. In preparation for this public hearing, in order to get the word out, additional animations and renderings on the project website were posted. They explained the various design elements, intersection reviews, and there were 5 narrated informational videos included with drive-throughs of the project corridor. Brief presentations of topics included the project overview, pedestrian and cyclists, improvements, traffic operations, transit operations, and construction impacts. And those videos were also translated with subtitles to the languages I previously mentioned. As previously described, the Champlain Parkway will be located within the current Pine Street right-of-way in Maple and King Street neighborhood. But there will be temporary right-of-way access to rebuild sidewalks and amenities along the project corridor. There is projected to be an increase in vehicle traffic along Pine Street and specifically within the Maple and King Street neighborhood. The Champlain Parkway, though, will reduce traffic volumes in some areas and increase it in others as was designed. And this is the no build volumes. And when you get to the build volumes, then you start seeing, and I'll toggle between that. You have no build and then build if you're seeing that now. And this is the new alignment in the blue. So the traffic shifts over to the new alignment and comes through Pine Street. But this actually improves level of service within the neighborhood because the signals are going to be synchronized and the overall traffic network will operate better, leading to improved traffic flow. I mentioned before, but the project will also involve temporary impacts to normal traffic, pedestrian and bicycle patterns due to paving and temporary sidewalk closures with detours to construct new curbing, sidewalks, and traffic signal equipment. So there will be an increase in traffic and there will be some temporary construction impacts. The project was designed to minimize project impacts within the Maple and King Street neighborhood, and mitigation was integrated into the project. Again, Pine Street will not be widened. All of the design features mentioned earlier will contribute to minimization and mitigation. This is a rendering showing the intersection of Pine Street and King Street and how it will look after construction. The project will improve mobility and accessibility and safety for all people who live and work or travel through the Maple and King Street neighborhood. The coordinated signal system will alleviate existing traffic congestion in the area and will provide smoother traffic flow and less overall delay in queuing than would exist without the project. The reduction of stop and go traffic and time spent idling at the 4-way stops that are there today, it will have a corresponding reduction in traffic noise and traffic emissions, resulting in improved air quality. As shown here on this rendering, curb extensions will be provided, which will shorten crossing distance at crosswalks. The crosswalks will also be brick color to improve contrast, make them more visible. Improved bicycle and pedestrian facilities will be constructed along the corridor, and new and continuous ADA compliant sidewalks and curb ramps will be installed along with new granite curbing along the roadway. Bike shared lanes and pavement markings will be included along Pine Street. The traffic signals will be new and upgraded, will include exclusive pedestrian phase with walk signals giving pedestrians time to cross the intersection while no vehicles are moving. Will make it much safer. The Champlain Parkway will improve transit access to the study area. Transit users in the Maple and King Street neighborhood will benefit from improved on-time bus service because of the reduced traffic congestion along Pine Street, and with transit signal priority capabilities that will be integrated into the traffic signals. And similarly, they'll also be equipped with emergency vehicle preemption, which will allow quicker response along Pine Street. Construction of the project in the Maple and King Street neighborhood will involve temporary impacts to normal traffic patterns due to paving and temporary sidewalk closures and detours to construct new curbing, sidewalks, and traffic signal equipment. A construction mitigation plan has been developed to address these issues and ensure that impacts are minimized to the extent practical. Temporary crosswalks will be painted with clear signing. Bicycle routes will be maintained and cleared of debris throughout construction. Emergency vehicle access will be maintained. Transit will be maintained. And during school, bus stop accommodations will be provided with additional flaggers. During no night work will take place within the Maple and King Street neighborhood, and there will be no work on holidays or special events. And a construction public involvement plan has been developed for the project. It'll be on the Parkway's website, champlainparkway.com, and it will be used to provide information requiring construction activities, progress, and scheduled activities. The website has been redesigned to be updated daily and will include an interactive project map to provide a closer look at the phase construction work and ongoing progress. Contact areas are included here. There will be a project hotline. You can email info@champlainparkway.com or go to the website. There will also be the project meetings and press releases as shown. So once the final step of the EJ analysis was to compare the impacts of all the neighborhoods within the study area, and then compare them with other neighborhoods. And this slide shows all the neighborhoods within relation to the project. So you have the main alignment coming through the project area. This black area represents the study area, and these are all the neighborhoods that were identified within the project area. When you compare those in a table of summary of the impacts, all neighborhoods will share both the improvements and some adverse effects from the project. The proposed design addresses the current transportation challenges and provides improvements in design elements to enhance mobility and safety for all users of the transportation network into the future. And that's based on all these considerations and the mitigation and the comparison with the neighborhoods. While the project will increase traffic and volume in the Maple and King Street neighborhood, it's concluded that the project will improve transportation mobility and safety for all users and will not cause disproportionately high and adverse effects on the Maple and King Street neighborhood. And that's in accordance with federal highway policy. So this concludes the technical portion of the presentation. Should give you a good overview of the analysis that was included in the LSDIS. This is an overview of that analysis. There's more detail within there. And the next steps are to collect and assess your comments, which are due on August 24th. Responses to those comments will be included in the limited scope final supplemental EIS. The limited scope EIS will be submitted to Federal Highway following the public comment period, and Federal Highway will either request additional changes to the project based on the limited scope or issue a record of decision. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Allison LaFleur, who's going to go over the public comment ground rules.
Hi, everybody. I'm Allison LaFleur, and we were going to talk about some ground rules before we move into our public comment period of the evening, which we know everyone is excited for. So we're going to ask, similar to the meeting we had in September, that, and really any public meeting or just in life, we ask that you be respectful. You need to listen to everybody else. In the interest, we know that a lot of people are very excited and ready to speak. We're limiting comments to 3 minutes per person, as we do with city council meetings, to really make sure that everyone who wants to speak can speak. If we get to a point where no one is asking to speak, you may speak for a second time if time allows. In the interest of the public record, we need to, every commenter, and we'll interrupt you and ask, you have to start by clearly stating and spelling your name into the record. Unlike when we're all together in person, we need the court reporter to be able to get everybody's name and properly identify you. Along those same lines, if you're on the Zoom room, a number of people only have first names or initials. If you can right click above your name, you'll see 3 dots. You can right click, or no, you just click once at the top corner and you'll be able to rename yourself. And we ask that you do that as well, because that will help us keep track of who's actually here with us this evening. If something has already been said, we ask that you fill out a comment card and wait to speak until all the different comments have been heard, so that we're able to get the full swath of comments before we repeat things. We know that a lot of people have similar views, so we'd like to hear all the different views before we go back to hear something we've already heard. If we can move to the next slide, Kevin. For the commenting procedures, as Chapin mentioned at the beginning, there are a number of ways that we'll put up on again at the end if after tonight you want to provide your comment. If you're in the room at DPW, we'll ask that you check in with staff, and then you'll follow directional signage and wait at markings. We're keeping you 6 feet apart for COVID reasons, obviously, for your turn to speak. You will have 3 minutes. On Zoom, you will raise your hand, and someone from DPW hosting the room will give you a call on you. And at that point, you can have up to 3 minutes. If you have a specific question and you want just the question in the record, you can type your question in and it can be read into the record. Unfortunately, we can't accept comments that way because not everyone is able to see the chat boxes, right? So we have folks at DPW in the Zoom room using all of the Zoom functions. And then we also have folks that have called in via Zoom. And then we have another group of folks that are watching us on YouTube. So we can't take comments in the record that way. But if you have a specific question, like I can't hear this person, or why is this design, why not to specific to this, a very specific question that we can quickly answer regarding this evening, basically, then we can read that question in from the Q&A box. But really, the Q&A box is for us to be able to help you with tech support. And if you have trouble, you can use that Q&A function to contact city staff. If you are on the phone or joining us via YouTube, you need to call in. So if you've already called in, you skip step 1. You've already done the calling the number and entering the webinar ID and the password. But to speak, you do *9 to be added to the queue. If you're watching on YouTube, you need to call in and then do the *9 and you'll be added to the queue. DPW staff is monitoring the Q&A to make sure that we're able to answer questions, technical questions from there, so far as I can't hear or this person's mic is muted, that type of thing. Everyone will be given the 3 minutes. And again, reminder, you need to clearly state and spell your name when you begin speaking. So I think at this point, we're ready. I don't know, I think it's Nicole at DPW will have the first folks queued up. It may be Laura. I'm very sorry. I don't know who is. We'll have folks queued up, but at this
Yep.
point, we're ready for public comment.
I will need to bring up the procedures and a clock now, so bear with
Yes.
me.
Thanks.
I guess I would like to ask, there are two participants that have had raised their hands early throughout the presentation. They would be first in line for this public comment. It would be Susie, followed by Joanne Kidder. If you are in line for public comment, just know that you are first and second. If you have your hand raised accidentally, please put it down yourself. Okay, so that did change our queue. The first for public comment when it is ready will be Zach Williamson. Is this also the DPW garage in person?
My understanding is you can't actually see us, right?
We cannot see you,
No,
correct?
it's like literally talking to a brick wall, but I'm going to try. Before I start in my
Wait,
3
hold on.
minutes,
Can you hold on?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure this is the DPW garage, is that correct?
it is.
All right, I'm gonna put you back on hold until our presenter's ready.
And just that quick reminder to begin with your first name and last name clearly spelled for us. Thank you.
Are you seeing, as an update on the screen, are you seeing the rules and a clock now?
No, we see a blank background, Kevin. It's almost like you've shared a different screen than what you're looking for. There you go. I see a 3-minute timer clock.
And you should see tonight's commenting procedures.
Yep, if you can stretch that window.
Okay. So
Yep, so I am going to enable the DPW garage to talk. The next commenter will be Tony Reddington. DPW garage, you are all set.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
I just have a question for Kevin. Kevin, you mentioned that there was you issued the intent to do the limited scope environmental impact statement, and then there was a public meeting. I think you got it backwards. The meeting was held before it was noted in the Federal Register, the intent to do the limited scope EIS. So I think that you've got that.
I apologize. I think I had the dates right on the slide, but I might have said that backwards. But we did have the targeted outreach on September 26, 2019.
There's been no, and my name's Steve Goodkind, by the way. There's been no public outreach since Federal Highway noted their intent to do a limited scope EIS. And I think that may affect how people commented and what they thought even at the public meeting, because that wasn't on the table. Anyway, just to note, the decision to do the limited EIS is not necessarily meeting the mandate of the federal rules for reviewing environmental justice. It's what FHWA and the project managers have decided to do. It doesn't mean it's going to pass muster. In fact, it's not going to pass muster. The mitigations you're proposing don't mitigate for increased traffic. In fact, they will increase traffic. They are not safer than the existing four-way stops. And I think unless this part of the project in Pine and Maple, which is affected and is impacted by environmental justice concerns, does not need this part of the project. It could be done without it. And I think it was your obligation not just to provide some little mitigations which have nothing to do with traffic volumes. It was your obligation also to look back at the old EIS and see how the other alternatives stacked up under environmental justice rules. And I think you had an obligation to even add an alternative that does meet those rules. So I think this is really lacking. I think it's going to turn out to be a problem in the end, and I think it'll be challenged. And I think just closing, I see they got that thing ticking, but Back in 2009, 2008, when I was a project manager, and we tried to have the project consider environmental justice matters on this, we were told that they really weren't very strong rules. And in fact, those rules couldn't supersede the other environmental concerns in the EIS at the time. Well, I think we all know times have changed. Not only are the rules stronger, but I think the public is beginning to recognize that decisions like the one made back in 2009 or 10 to put this volume of traffic on a project through this neighborhood, it was wrong then. It's even wronger now. And say 3 minutes isn't much time. You're going to get a lot of comments on it, but I would urge people to oppose this. There's other ways to do this project that do not violate environmental justice concerns. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Okay. The next one up is Tony Reddington. Tony, you should be able to speak.
Thank you. Tony Reddington, TonyRedington. Thank you. I want to follow up on the same comment that Steve Goodkind made, which is that in fact, and that's the real concern here, is that the King Maple neighborhood really is made up of, as far as the project is concerned, 3 or 4 blocks, we were shown that, a couple of intersections, and the cross streets of Maple, King, and I guess you could add Main Street at the top. But as a practical matter, there is nothing in the original environmental studies that talks about safety, analyzes safety, suggests what before and after safety would be at those 2 intersections. And while we have 6 new intersections in the overall project, all going to be traffic signals, 6 new traffic signals, let's focus on King Maple only, because that's where the center of this immediate discussion center is located. Right now, as was explained, the intersections at Pine and King and Pine and Maple are 4-way stops. I don't think there's a traffic engineer in the world that would suggest to you that converting an all-way stop intersection to a traffic signal does anything for pedestrians but increases the likelihood, frequency, and of injury or even fatality. The 4-way stop is, or the all-way stop is considered the safest intersection. And the federal highway data, you can look it up, it's online, will show that when you switch from all-way stops to a traffic signal, you're going to have about a 20% increase in pedestrian injuries. You say, well, why does that matter? There's car occupants and there's bicycles and so forth. Why are pedestrians so important? Well, for the very reason we're holding this meeting, which is 1 out of 5 persons who live in the Maple King neighborhood is a minority. They're brown and black, Hispanics, African Americans. And that population in the Maple King neighborhood, 1/3 of them do not have access to a car. They are pedestrian dependent. They are dependent upon their movement by foot to get to the buses that go up and down Pine Street. So the very discussion here of all the fancy things that are talked about signals and coordination and so forth, disguises the fact that what we have is a clear case of embedded racism. The very declaration of a public health racism emergency for the city just a week ago. And here we have the perfect example of an embedded racist situation that the city engineering, the consultants have not addressed. So I would like to speak further in other respects of this project, but I think the key thing is that we should not have, and we should not build a Champlain Parkway through the King Maple neighborhood. Stand with the previous mayors of the city, Clavell and Kiss. Stand with the former director of the DPW, Steve Goodkind, and say no more. Stop. No parkway through this section of town. And I think that when we do that, we will also recognize and recall that the Burlington Walk Bike Council endorsed the Pine Street redesign guidelines. And those guidelines, quite frankly, the reason that Walk Bike Council opposes this project is because there's no provision for decent walking and bicycle facilities anywhere on it. And the city knows that, the feds know that, and so does VTrans. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mayumi. You should be able to unmute yourself and provide your comment.
I can't, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay. For the record, my name is Mayumi Cornell, M-A-Y-U-M-I, Cornell, C-O-R-N-E-L-L. I believe that this is an ill-conceived idea because this neighborhood is full of low to middle income people, like Mr. Reddington said, that depend on walking. It also has the King Street Youth Center. And if this idea goes forward, somebody will be killed. And this to me smacks of systematic racism. And that has not been considered. And that is important. And it's important that you listen to your constituency who is telling you that this is an ill-conceived idea. It only centers on like a very small radius of what is going to be impacted by this. And you have to remember there are children that live in this neighborhood and somebody will die. And it will be most likely a Black or brown child. And I'm very, very disappointed with the city right now. I yield my time.
Thank you for your comment.
There are no other hands raised at the moment. Hold on. Okay, the next one that's been raised that hasn't spoken yet is Susie. You can unmute yourself and state your name.
Hi, my name is Susie Taylor. That's S-U-S-I-T-A-Y-L-O-R. Here we are again, Champlain Parkway, public hearings. I thank you for the opportunity, but like the speakers that went before me, I can't believe that we're here in July of 2020 talking about whether it is disproportionately adverse to run more traffic through a low income and minority neighborhood. And I've had discussions with a lot of people who are in the decision making, and I thank everybody for their time, but I don't agree. I live 3 doors down from the corner of Pine and Maple Street, and I've lived here for a long time. I cannot approve or support a plan that brings more traffic through my neighborhood. And there's a couple of things that are pretty obvious, but I feel like they have to be restated. One is you can't have a public hearing in a pandemic. I don't care. Thank you for all of the efforts that have been made, but you cannot have a public hearing in a pandemic. My neighbors who are low income and minority struggle every day to keep their families housed and fed and safe. In a pandemic, the concern about a highway that's been on the books for 50 years and may or may not happen does not rise to a priority. They have to pay attention to their kids, their families, and their safety. So public hearing in a pandemic just doesn't work. The other thing, people can't get here. If you're low income, I couldn't even provide a ride for my neighbor to get to Public Works with a pandemic out. I had a hard time figuring out the Zoom, and I've been on a bunch of Zoom meetings, but you know, if you don't have a computer, you don't have minutes on your cell phone, you don't have an opportunity to get to Public Works, and you don't have an opportunity to read 500 and something pages, you're not going to do it. And that's the reality of my neighbors who are low income and minority. They don't have that opportunity. And with regards to when I do just talk with them, everybody agrees we don't want more traffic. And I'm glad Steve actually went before me, because one of my comments is, I'm not an engineer, but we don't want more traffic. That's the unanimous discussion when I speak with my low income minority and my other neighbors. We don't want more. And I don't feel that the stoplights are going to be enough mitigation to make it fair or not disparate. If the other folks aren't getting, if they're getting a reduction in traffic and we're getting an increase in traffic, that to me is also racial and economic injustice to our low and minority income neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you. The next individual who hasn't spoken yet is Mark Hughes. You should be able to unmute yourself and provide your comment and your name, please.
Thank you. My name is Mark Hughes. That's MarkHughes. I am the Executive Director of Justice for All, and I'm also the coordinator for the Racial Justice Alliance. These are organizations that fight for the eradication of systemic racism across Vermont. Yes, I think LSDIS. Yeah, first of all, thanks City, thanks Feds, thanks B-Trans. You know, just to me, it just resonates the fact that we are indeed in the middle of a global pandemic. And with that, you know, every single racial disparity that exists across all systems that are impacting Black and Brown people, not the least of which we are dying at higher rates, are being exacerbated at the same time. So yeah, this is quite disappointing for that reason. And I don't want to go too far into echoing, you know, let me just back up on that. You know, quite frankly, I'll just say it. I think, you know, those of us who are here who are witnessing this, and those who witness it in the future, thinking, understanding that this being the 29th of July in 2020, in the middle of a global pandemic, and with all of this other stuff that's going on, just folks are just trying to figure out how to make it, how not to die with this going on. You know, it really should actually outrage us, you know, so I'll just put it on the record. I am outraged that this is actually going on. So the other thing that I'm insulted about is the fact that you're trying to convince us that the air quality and the noise level in that neighborhood is going to either be the same or be reduced. In short, that is just complete nonsense. And then I think this whole piece about, you know, looking at that map and seeing the traffic patterns and how this has so little impact really at the end of the day, across skirting these neighborhoods, coming across the south end, and then finally dumping right through this Black and Brown neighborhood, which is, I think, upwards of about 21% of Black and Brown folks today. Is just ridiculous. So yeah, I stand in total opposition to this project. You know, I think if it has to happen like this, then I say kill it. I don't really care how many years you've been working on this, and I really don't care how much money you try to hold against us to say, oh, if we kill it, you're going to have to pay that or whatever. I don't know how much money these lives in this community is worth. So yeah, if it doesn't work, I mean, if you can't get this done like this, then kill it. There's been no mention of a Superfund site that you're trying to avoid that nobody seems to want to clean up either. So yeah, this is a big mess. Take it back where you got it from. I say no go. And I do totally appreciate the time that you've given me to chime in on this. Thank you all for your work.
Thank you for your comment.
There are no other first-time speakers that have raised their hands at this point. Are we ready to take second comments? Kevin?
Yeah, yes, if there's no other folks that have already spoken.
Okay. The first to speak again will be Tony Reddington, followed by Mayumi. Tony, you should be able to unmute
Yeah,
yourself and comment.
yes, I just unmuted myself. Thank you so much. I will not try to, I'll just make a couple of points here that I think the previous speakers have pretty much said it all. The reason we should be concerned about pedestrian injuries is the fact, and the fact is that pedestrian injuries are very much racially related. African Americans suffer pedestrian fatalities and injuries at twice the rate of whites, and Hispanics at 50% a greater amount. So here we have a neighborhood which we've agreed is 21% minority, 30%, almost a third, have no car access, and therefore it's clear that the safety and the issues regarding this population are ones of pedestrian safety, and the signals just do not provide an adequate level. I'm a walk safety advocate. That's my background. I have to apologize because I was one of those ones who used to laugh at, and I did, and I apologize for that as a transportation policy person at the weakness of environmental justice. And it was only because of this process that I finally became aware of the racism and the discrimination against those who are pedestrians, that it's very much race related. And right now, in the United States, in the last 10 years, the pedestrian fatalities have gone up 50%. This is something that's a problem unto itself, much less in our King Maple neighborhood. And I just think that in terms of percentage of traffic, there's a note in this latest document that, oh, the traffic's only going up 9%. Well, that is a misnomer, as the traffic, as the consultants know. The Parkway will increase traffic by 9% on the section between Lakeside and Maple. It will increase the traffic between Maple and Main Street by 27%. And on King Street itself, Pine to Battery, 37%. So this 9%, we can play games with numbers, but in fact, the traffic is going to increase, and it's going to increase in sections of this area a lot more than 9% as in the material. So I guess that I'll end by saying Dan Burden, who's on the list, 58th top urbanist in the history of the world, spoke to Mayor Weinberger at the intersection of Pine and Maple, and said to him when Burden learned that they were going to put a traffic signal in there, and this was in 2014 at an AARP workshop, that would be a huge mistake, Burden told the mayor. And here we are talking about this huge mistake. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Okay, thank you. Mayumi, you should be able to unmute yourself and speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I would just like to add that I am mixed. I am one of the very few. I'm 43. I will be 44 on the 22nd of this month, that has lived and grown up in this city my entire life. And I can tell you, after living in that neighborhood for nearly 2.5 years, that there are so many kids that live in this neighborhood, somebody's going to get hurt. And I know children that live in this neighborhood. So I am urging you to quash this project and bring it up at a later date, because right now is not the time. There are many, as the person who spoke after I spoke the first time said, there are many people who don't have internet, who are just worrying about surviving day to day. You know, that's the reality of many people's lives right now. And I think it would be ill-advised to do this without having public comment from them. And I think it boggles my mind that we're doing this now. After all that we know and all the numbers that everybody has brought up, that we are doing this now. When you know about racial disparities. I mean, I don't get it. And I am telling you, someone is gonna get hurt. And then who's gonna pay for their care if they're a paraplegic, a quadriplegic, or if they're out of work for months, they'll lose their housing. They will lose everything. Most Americans are only one paycheck away, and that was before this pandemic started. Now, it's probably not even one paycheck away. You know, the federal government stimulus hasn't even passed yet. They're still arguing over things. And yet we're sitting here discussing something that I believe needs to be tabled. Thank you for your time and consideration. I yield my time.
Thank you for your comment.
Okay, the next speaker is Paul Connor. Paul, you should be able to unmute yourself and provide comment.
Hi, folks. Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. My name is Paul Connor, first name Paul, last name Conner. There's been a lot of important things talked about tonight, and I want to sort of flag a couple of other subjects, not to detract from those, but just to pose a couple of questions. One is that the study area was identified as being between Maple Street and Main Street, and both in terms of the subject area, and then I think in your description, Kevin, in terms of where night work would not take place. And I was just sort of curious as to what the, whether the study area, how it treats the portion of the neighborhood that is a little bit south of Maple Street, that includes 5 or 6 buildings on either side. So that was the first question. And then I guess the second question was, we've had a rare and unexpected opportunity in the last few months with COVID-19 to see a version of how the pedestrian and specifically the bicycle facilities could operate in a different way through this section, and especially between Lakeside and Maple Street, and understanding that some of that is a lesser pressure on parking in that area. I was curious to see whether the plan designers have what kind of lessons learned have come of that, knowing how popular that section has been for especially cyclists, either from the neighborhood or further away. And I know that's not directly related to the limited scope EIS, but it's sort of timely. So those are my 2 questions, and I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you for your comment.
Okay, the next to speak will be the DPW garage.
I'll try and be quick. It's Steve Goodkind again. I couldn't agree more with the speakers you've heard previously. And the idea that we're pursuing this bad idea, but just in the face of the city declaring racism as a health emergency, and then almost the same day to put this out. This is the same blindness, and Tony Reddington put it better than me, the same blindness that caused this version of the project, a project never supported by the city, but forced upon us by the Federal Highway Administration back 10 or 12 years ago. Never wanted this. It was never the vision to put this traffic through a neighborhood like this. And the thought that making the intersections along Pine more efficient in any way is better for the neighborhood. Making it a more efficient transportation corridor is not going to benefit this neighborhood one iota. It will not be safer. It will not be quieter. And if you look at some of the other neighborhoods that are benefiting, and we really never did get that juxtaposition, but look what's happening, say, in the South End, Home and Flynn, huge reductions in traffic, up to 70%. Now, if traffic signals and crosswalks were mitigation, why bother with the project? Why not just put a few traffic signals and some crosswalks on those streets? Of course, it sounds preposterous, but that's the blindness. The low income, the minority neighborhood, oh yeah, we'll put it through there. Let's just get this project off our plates. That was the attitude of FHWA 10 years ago. I don't think it's gonna fly today. It shouldn't. I hope the city council takes this on and wakes up and insists that we get not just this limited EIS, but one that looks at what the alternatives are. We can have a project. We can have a project that does much more good than this project and does not do the harm. And I think there's an obligation for that to happen. Again, I hope our city council speaks up and insists that that be looked at, and that the project is not allowed to sneak through with this so-called limited scope. It lacks many things, more than I could go through in the 48 seconds I've got left. There'll be some long, well-developed comments on this, but I would urge people to realize that this project does not have to be this way. We shouldn't be building it out of fear that we'll have to pay money back. And building a highway project out of fear, I've never heard of such a thing. So pay attention, people. Look what's happening here. I believe this project is going to be stopped, and a better project is going to emerge that we'll all be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Okay, the next and currently last hand that's raised is Mark Hughes. Mark, you should be able to unmute and provide comment.
Thank you again. And I'll just for record anyway, MarkHughes. I wanted to just state, at this juncture that I wasn't quite sure what was going on with this project, quite frankly. And I'm relatively new, not to the state, but to the city a couple of years. Have been paying very close attention. And about 2 Thursdays ago, as the coordinator of the Racial Justice Alliance, I stood right next to the mayor, and I partnered with him in a commitment to address and to call out in declaration racism as a public health emergency. And there are 30 other organizations that stood with us. And I was having a conversation with Charlie Baker just the other day, and I was also sharing some thoughts with Jeff Bridges about the commitment, the full commitment that these folks have to that. I was on a call with Kyle Dodson just today, having similar conversations. I invited some of the members of our steering committee. Mayumi is one of them. Now that we know, now that I do understand fully what's going on, I do make a commitment to you. Is I will go back to the Racial Justice Alliance, and we'll come back with the full commitment and support, the same type of support that you saw in addressing Operation Phoenix. So we'll bring that back to you, and hopefully what you can do is maybe get the message. I think the other thing is that, I was looking at the project goals, and a couple of project goals say eliminate disruption to local neighborhoods and separate the local and through traffic. One says provide traffic relief in the southwestern quadrant. And then I looked again at the environmental justice statement that you made. It says environmental justice at FHWA means identifying and addressing disproportionately high and adverse effects of the agency's programs, policies, and activities on minority and low-income populations to achieve an equitable distribution of benefits and burdens. So you're having a whole lot of problems just getting to your own standard there, okay? So I just say finally, I was reflecting here as we're still in the final days of John Lewis's final resting. And I was thinking, what could have been going on 50 years or so ago when you guys were planning this, as Dr. King was assassinated, as people were being beat on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And it just occurred to me that this project has been around just that long, and we're still dealing with the same problems. So stop it now. We'll be back. We'll tell you more. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Okay, there are no other hands raised at this time.
If there are no other comments, we could go on to the next process for comment. Posting what the comment procedures will be after the hearing. Does anyone else want to comment?
There are still no hands raised.
So can you see my PowerPoint presentation again?
Yes. I see
Is
the
it on
commenting procedures after tonight.
Yep. Nope. And they just disappeared.
We can still see them.
Okay, good.
Now we're back at the beginning slide.
Oh, geez. Let me get down to the end here. So after tonight, these were the same commenting procedures that Chapin mentioned at the beginning of the project hearing. The mail address is at Champlain Parkway with care of Susan Molzen, Burlington DPW, 645 Pine Street in Burlington, Vermont, 05401. You can comment through the website at champlainparkway.com. Email comments can go to info@champlainparkway.com. And you can also telephone to leave a message at 802-496-8956. Comment period is going to end on August 24th, 2020. And with that, I'd like to thank all of you for attending this virtual public hearing and some in-person public hearing at the city of Burlington, Vermont. And thank you very much for your time this evening. We look forward to seeing your comments. And with that, we'll conclude our hearing for tonight at 7:25.